I've shown my willingness to travel with my desktop monitor and a power supply in order to get a proper gaming experience outside of my office, and out of my house for that matter. However, for incredibly obvious reasons, it's a highly impractical and laborious exercise, regardless of the amazing FPS numbers that I can get. Thankfully, my friends over at MSI's notebook division here in South Africa saw my desktop traveling plight and sent me what they thought would be the direct antidote for my gaming needs. While it may not give my arms as much of a workout as, say, traveling with the entire desktop, the GS43 VR packs just as much performance as my desktop can provide. Armed with an Intel i7-6700HQ processor, 16GB of 2400MHz DDR4 RAM, and a desktop-class GTX 1066GB graphics card, the GS43 VR shows up tremendously in the benchmarks. Performing roughly on par to its desktop equivalent, this notebook, while being only 14 inches in screen size, is certainly no slouch. Remarkable as the specs are, it's also worthy to note that the laptop comes in at less than 4 pounds or 1.8 kilograms in total weight and roughly 22 millimeters in height, or about the thickness of 2 smartphones. Desktop class gaming in the smallest of packages indeed. Coming to the display, the 14-inch screen boasts a 1080p IPS panel which has great color reproduction and viewing angles. Also of great note here is what MSI chose not to leave out in order to achieve this level of thinness. You still get a full gigabit Ethernet jack, a standard power plug, USB 3.0 port, an SD card reader, which apparently is an endangered species at this point, and dedicated headphone and mic ports. Following that, there's a mini DisplayPort output on the back, and on the right side there's an HDMI 2.0 out, a second USB 3 port, and a Thunderbolt 3 port. MSI ensures that you won't have to be about the dongle life that Apple is now forcing on their MacBook Pro users. The main 256GB SSD is also incredibly fast with over 2GB per second read speeds and 1GB per second write speeds, which means you'll likely be one of the first to load into a game of Battlefield. Or, to put it another way, you can transfer the entirety of Battlefield 1's game folder in less than 60 seconds, limited only by your other drive speeds. Alternatively, if you don't need that blistering speed and just need a place to dump files, MSI includes a 1TB 7200 RPM storage hard drive as well. The red backlit keyboard is remarkably solid. The keystrokes have a definitive and enjoyable tactile bump, which is no surprise since it's a SteelSeries keyboard. And the touchpad, while lacking dedicated click buttons, is easy enough to use that I won't curmudgeon too much about it here. Although I'm not sure curmudgeon is a verb. As far as thermal performance goes, while the GS43 VR is remarkably thin, the Cooler Boost 3 heat pipes that MSI puts for the 1060 and 6700 HQ does a good enough job with the GPU coming out to 87 degrees and the CPU to 90 degrees on a full-bore 100% load stress test. In gaming, temps are roughly 5 or so degrees lower thanks to the lesser CPU usage. While it's not great, it's certainly good enough to keep the components running at full tilt. However, while the cooling performance is up to snuff, there's a couple of things that I feel MSI skimped on here with the GS43 VR. Firstly, the speaker setup. While there are dual 2-watt speakers, they sound like poo, especially at anything above medium volume. This was a shock to me, especially since my Apache Pro Daily Driver has fantastic audio output. Secondly, the bloatware. Norton Antivirus is as annoying as any program I've used and comes included with this notebook. Also, who needs a trial of WinZip anymore? Windows includes a zipping utility in Windows 10. The frustration of WinZip was clearly evident when I tried to install MSI Afterburner, since it's a zip file that unzips to a RAR file, which then decompresses into an executable. And thirdly, battery life. I'm not sure it can be blamed on the GS43 VR's smaller size, since the other MSI review laptops that I've had performed roughly about the same, but less than 2 hours on the PCMark 8 battery life test isn't great, especially since that's not even gaming protocols, just some minor document work and web browsing. However, none of that is to say that the GS43 VR is bad, but rather it just isn't perfect. If you're looking to get an ultra-portable desktop-grade gaming notebook, then the GS43 VR fits that bill. The inclusion of the SD card reader as well as other ports give it some legs as a content creation notebook as well. However, this comes with the caveat that you can't use the laptop too long away from a wall outlet or use it to play your music on the speakers, if you want to enjoy your music, that is. But if you're satisfied with just being able to jam a game of Battlefield at your nearest coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, using your headset to be courteous to the other patrons, then the GS43 VR is nearly as good as it gets. And with that, I want to thank MSI South Africa's notebook division for sending the GS43 VR over for review. I want to hear what your thoughts are on the GS43 VR. Does it make the right compromises to provide high-end gaming with a small footprint, or would you rather trade size for battery life? Let's have that conversation in the comments down below. Be sure to like this video if you found it helpful at all, or dislike it if you're of the opposite persuasion. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of my tech-related content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.